there are different types of technology: the underground, on level, the above ground. Uh, what is your concept of the most efficient technology for transportation?
Well, if we're comparing the different rail transportation systems that you just spoke of,
Yeah.
the efficiency comes directly related to the purpose. If you and to the number of passengers. If you want to go underground, you want long distance between your stops, and you want to get the most out of the high speed. So this is why people say it's a good thing for UBC. You can go from Commercial Drive with a few stops, and 40,000 people will be at UBC very quickly. A different style relates to, say, surface transportation, where you could have a streetcar or a tramway. That would be very good to fit along Broadway with the kind of land uses that are there. There you don't want to miss land uses. You want to have lots of stops so people can get on and get off, and intermediate stops. So instead of downtown to UBC, you want to be able to go from maybe Arbutus to Granville.
But what I understand, what you're saying is that the efficiency becomes in how many stops do you have to make from point A to point B, and you're saying that if there's long distances, perhaps it's more efficient to go underground. Is that because of the intersections that the transit has to cross?
Yeah, you can be more quick. You know, train takes a minute to get up to speed, then it's traveling at high speed. So efficiency encompasses so many things.
Right.
And it's partly the convenience, and it's partly the land use. There are other people who say we don't want to have a subway underground from the center of town out to UBC because it will avoid all those land uses. They would rather have surface transportation so people can get on and get off, and it will serve better. In the discussion in Surrey is whether to have SkyTrain versus on the level light rail.
Street level, yeah.
And the efficiency there is mostly around the cost because SkyTrain is the equivalent of building a bridge for its whole length. So the most expensive is to tunnel. The next expensive is to put a SkyTrain. And on the road, you already own the road, and you can put rail transport on it, speed quickly and cheaply.
And the only problem would be with left turns, like cars that want to make a left turn. The real road would be right in the way. But they could put maybe the odd overpass in some main streets, so the traffic could flow easily. How about here in Victoria? What would you recommend for from here to Souk or from here to the ferry?
I think in the long run, we should be looking at surface rail. In the short run, I think we should be looking at commuter rail using the ENN line because it's already there.
It's already there.
And I think that we should then be looking at not the LRT system that was proposed by Transit and that costs nearly $1 billion. They didn't bring any alternatives. And I think that they went for basically a complete rebuild of Douglas Street. Very expensive. And I think that they could have looked at cheaper options along the lines of a trolley car or a streetcar system that would have done the job and also cost less.
A trolley car would still require
it would still
really
require
tracks.
It would require tracks.
So what is the difference with the proposition that the City Hall had?
The proposition that they had was that the rail would be in a totally segregated right-of-way instead of mixing with cars and traffic. That they would be rebuilding from one curb to the next in order to do it instead of just putting
in the middle, wherever it is, sharing with the
others.
Traffic. Similar of King Street, Queen Street in Toronto.
In Toronto, and I was recently in Istanbul, And I was so impressed with their tram system that goes basically from the west side of town into the center of town where Topkapi Museum and all the big tourist things are. Because there they are really totally in the road, but they come every 3 or 5 minutes and they take about 10 seconds to pass any spot. So out of the minutes, they're not there long. So that the train goes through and then the traffic reorganizes itself and then the train goes through. Yeah.
Did they think it's too dangerous, perhaps, to...
It's difficult to know. I was part of the Citizens Advisory Group, and we were never told what the reasons were. They came with these, and that was that. So it can be safety. It can be the volumes of traffic that they think.
So you're saying that the least expensive would be perhaps trolleys like the King Street in Toronto, with the line sharing with the other traffic, and the second expensive would be the elevated train, SkyTrain type of in Vancouver, and then the most expensive is the tunnel because you have to dig in. And you're also saying that the metal wheels on tracks are more efficient, perhaps less expensive in the long run than rubber wheels.
Oh, absolutely. You and I could start a train car by pushing very slowly, but the friction between steel and steel is so much less than the friction between rubber and pavement.
Now, and speaking of the environment, which technology would be the most efficient for considering the environment, and why?
Well, I think you first have got to look at environment broadly. And the first and most important thing is carbon dioxide emissions. More than half the CO2 emissions in the capital region come from transportation. And any one of the three things we're talking about will be better than single occupancy vehicles. They won't be as good as feet or bikes. So they're in the middle. You have to consider the life cycle cost because trains typically last 30 years. Buses last 7 to 15 years. So you have to consider the energy costs and other costs in the construction and the use,
the length of the
and the eventual disposal. So any of the rail systems are so much more efficient and use so much less fuel than rubber tires, whether they're on buses or cars, that they're in a different league all by themselves. Within buses, we've got electric buses in Vancouver. There are hybrid buses here in Victoria. So the technology is changing for buses. Your diesel bus is a polluter. But again, compared to everybody sitting in their cars, it's a benefit.
Do you know why they took the rail tracks from the 20s and 30s that we had in Victoria and Vancouver and many cities all around North America?
The historical version is that the car industry was very active in convincing politicians that streetcars were old-fashioned. The way of the future was the car.
Automobile.
And they tore up streetcars from most of the cities.
So it was a political decision, not a technological advantage.
Exactly. It was seen to be a technological advantage as well. Because at the same time, cities were growing and the suburbs were getting bigger, and the desire to have independent transportation was happening at the same time. The old layout of Vancouver and of Victoria was around the trams and streetcar system.
But if the tracks went to the small suburbs, then the technological advantage would have been to change to an automobile, to the individual private automobile, which clogs the highways and clogs the streets, jams the streets.
And then what do? You build more roads. And the road people were not unhappy about that either.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the United States, more than here, it was very much a political decision because it was the U.S. Corps of Engineers that did most of the highway building.
So what is the alternative for the Burrard Street Bridge? What are you proposing? Because the cyclists want somehow some accommodation there.
I'm with the cyclists. Take the traffic lane away from the vehicles, give it to the cyclists. That would reduce traffic, reduce greenhouse emissions, and be better for bicyclists.
I ride a bicycle all the time, and I noticed that some streets have the sign bicycle route, but there are still cars going in both ways, and some of those streets are very narrow. Is it possible? And now Polling.ca we have that question, and some people have gone and said, yes, we would like to have it. Some people want to ban cars from completely out of those streets assigned as the bicycle paths, and some others want at least to have it one way, so half of the street would be devoted to bicycles. Do you think that is feasible?
I think we should allow neighborhoods to turn their neighborhoods into car-free neighborhoods. We should allow neighbors to vote democratically, even on a block-by-block basis. If in a particular 100 block, a majority of the homeowners in that 100 block want to voluntarily agree to eliminate on-street parking and then narrow the street to one lane, make it a one-way lane, that would deepen the lots, so everybody's lot would now be about 10 feet deeper. It would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it would reduce traffic use, and it would be perfect for bicyclists.
Yeah, how about bicycle lanes? Do you think that people should look more into bicycles, and perhaps the governments should develop the infrastructure so people can go on those specific lanes for bicycles?
I absolutely think so. And Victoria is very good because of the weather we have and because we don't have huge hills.
And Vancouver.
And Vancouver also. I think that the research done shows that you can get about 7% of the population using streets that are shared with cars, with or without, well, it gets up higher if you have bike lanes, but to get, say, 30%, you need segregated, separate ones because some people are fearless, but most people aren't. And I think that Gregor Robertson in Vancouver has been more bold and daring and said, right, we're going to do Burrard Bridge. And many people said, oh, well, it'll be a disaster and no one will get home at night and, you know, life goes on. So he has pushed further. Portland, Oregon has gone even further in its planning, which is saying we're going to re-engineer the streets. We're not just going to put lanes on. We're going to put separate, more like Holland, where they have a separate system that the bikes can use.
What do you think about fare-free buses?
I think that they've shown themselves to be useful in making downtowns work, where people will hop on and off, where you want to encourage circulation.
Yeah, like Calgary and Seattle.
Yeah, and you know, to get from the suburb to downtown, you know, that's a journey to work or it's a journey to shop. But when you're downtown,
there's more traffic jams.
So so you want to have people circulate.
The environmental impact on people going into public transit rather than driving their car, the environmental impact in the city would be very, very appreciated.
That's significant. From air quality, from safety and accidents, from affordability and accessibility, because, you know, kids under 18 can't drive cars. Pensioners, and we've got many of them, don't feel comfortable driving as they get older. So it's a fairness issue, it's an affordability issue, it's an environmental issue, and they take up so much valuable real estate,
Yeah, yeah.
either
Parking.
on the street or expensively dug underneath
For parking.
the buildings. Yeah,
The drivers probably would appreciate it too, because they don't have to be worried about is your transfer expired, you put the right change. People would just walk in and walk out, so
Yeah.
that would make it more efficient.
for them. Yeah.
They would have less time to idle there while
Well,
they're
oh, of
checking
course,
on people.
yes, yeah.
So it would run faster.
Yep, that's the theory. Depending on the downtown, it will always be congested.
But it would help.
but- oh, it
because a
would
lot of
certainly
people
help.
would-
Oh, yeah,
rather than taking their
Yeah,
car
yeah.
downtown, they would take the free bus.
Yes, yeah, and I think that it's another political decision how much the passenger pays compared to how much the government pays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the government already pays like 1/3 or 1/2 from what they collect and fare boxes is just about 1/3 of the
That's right,
total
yeah.
budget. So if the government's already paid, they could very easily put some more taxes on gasoline or
Yeah.
expensive cars, on whatever, and on parking,
Make it free.
and make it free.
Yeah,
So it would be a very small change to say,
Make it-
okay, we assume the whole
Whole cost,
budget
yeah.
between
And-
the provincial and the municipal governments.
yeah, and the Campbell government was far-seeing when it put on the carbon tax, but they, I think, would have been even more far-seeing if they had said, and the proceeds of the tax will go to transportation, because that's where most of the carbon originates.
Right,
But
right.
instead they said, no, it will be it will be revenue neutral, we won't do anything with the money. I am hoping that in the next, after the election, that people will start to say, okay, let's keep the carbon tax, but let's make it do something that we all want it to do.
So you think that the government should pay about 100% of both governments, municipal and provincial, 100% of the cost of transportation?
I think we could have a good public discussion on that. I don't think it needs to be free in order to get the desirable effects. And if we need the money from somewhere, is it better to take it from the person who rides the bus than some other place? So I think we can have a bigger discussion because there are choices to be made. And the money is big. I mean, this is not small money.
Well, we pay taxes.
Of course, we all do. And some pay more than others.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
So all that money is really coming from our pockets. The
Yes.
government is
Oh, yeah.
not producing that money.
No.
We're producing by paying taxes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how big the budget is, as long as we're willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
And we pay one way or the other. Either I pay for my car, the insurance, the repairs, the gasoline,
Yeah.
or I pay a little more for public transportation.
Yes, and I think that the people, especially in the suburbs, are now very well aware of that. That's why Langford and Surrey are very keen to get some rail links because their people bought suburban houses and the cost in time, money, daycare of these long commutes in private cars is not pleasant. You know, 2 cars, 3 cars. If we could just take 1 car away from the average household in Langford, we'd be in great shape.
Yeah. Technology, of course, could change also. Instead of using a lot of oil, they could turn it to electric or other ways, gas or something that's less polluting. So what do you think they should? You would advocate for more less polluting, more efficient forms of combustion?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, I mean, some of the ideas that have been tossed around here for public transportation has been kind of surrounding light rail transit and expansion of SkyTrain here in Surrey. Those are some of the options. Some other ideas have been tossed around as far as using previously existing rail transportation routes and just retrofitting those areas to accommodate some type of light rail technology, all of which would be electrically operated. And we live in a diverse geographical region where we can actually utilize different energy technologies like geothermal, biomass, wind, water, solar. I mean, we live in an area where we can actually harness these energy.
And convert it to electricity for transit.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we already produce quite a bit of electricity, and we sell a lot of that to other regions as well. So I mean, it's not to say that it's not possible. It's just the political will needs to be there to drive it.
How about environmental consequences? Like if there is less cars in the road, obviously the environment would benefit, and that would be achieved by more public transit.
Yes. I mean, I think it's about 2/5 of BC's greenhouse gases are coming from transportation. If we increase our reliance on cars and trucks for transportation modes, we're just going to be increasing the amount of greenhouse gases that are going to be going into our air. Another part of the Green Party's policy includes going into localized economies, whereby goods will be produced locally and manufactured locally, and reducing the carbon footprint that transportation puts on some of these goods. So those are some of the strategies that we would hope to kind of thwart, further destruction or degradation of the environment, and also remain prosperous economically.
And if buses were fare free, more people would stop driving and would take advantage of free public transportation, wouldn't they?
Definitely, and that goes into other issues in society as well. Like one of the key areas in reducing poverty is access to transportation. If people would have more access to transportation, they would have access to opportunities, access to job opportunities. They'd have more access to childcare provisions, like the things that make people successful in today's society. Transportation is a huge part of that.
So just to recap,
Yeah.
you're saying that in Vancouver, the street level lines, tracks of rapid transit on the street level would be the most efficient and perhaps more environmentally friendly.
I would certainly look at it first over other options. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not recommending that right now.
I think I would need to have a balance sheet put forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And for Victoria, what are you recommending? What do you think would be the most efficient and environmentally friendly system?
I would say first use the ENN, then take the study that was done for LRT and take it apart and put in more options for the technology and for the street rebuild.
So your recommendation is first of all to look at the CNN, or you call it ENN?
Yeah, Esquimalt and Nanaimo. That's what it's.
Esquimalt and Nanaimo route.
Yes.
The existing.
The existing
railroad.
train. Yeah.
And second.
Put a commuter system in that goes to the western communities, to downtown, on the ENN tracks.
Oh, okay. So you were talking first of just the existing the old train, the old 2 cars or something.
Yeah.
But you're talking of putting some real trains there that would have a more regular schedules.
Yeah.
All right.
Because there's.
And how about the rapid transit from here to the ferry?
I would start with redoing the study that recommended the LRT and see what we can do with it. And the public input was very small. The questions the public wanted to be asked didn't get answered. The public made it clear they wanted a rail system, but they got a rail system that cost $1 billion rather than a rail system.
Infrastructure being redesigned. The
Yes,
street
exactly.
Itself,
Yeah.
So it's not just the train and the tracks, but also the
full business.
the whole landscape being shuffled around.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they also, built in expensive technology. So I think that they should have brought forward at least 5 options.
Yeah.
Again, I've been part of some poverty reduction strategy discussions here for Surrey, and a huge chunk of that eradication process is introduction of appropriate and accessible public transportation methods, and we definitely need some of that here in Surrey. That's for sure. Just the whole Metro Vancouver region needs to be have a better mode of interconnectedness through transportation, and I think I'd definitely be an advocate for that if I was elected, and I would spearhead any type of provisions to improve transit in the region here.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and we'll wish you well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you think that you can do something to change that, or you think that our society is going to go to the point of no return and actually lose completely the few democratic rights that we have before people react?
Well, I'm always an optimist, and I've always believed in people and believed in the fact that people will stand up for what they believe is right, and that eventually they can only be pushed so far, and there'll be a reaction. So I continue to be an optimist, although I am drifting a little to the second point of view that perhaps they won't do anything until it's too late, until everything we have in this province has been sold out from underneath our feet, until private sector multinational companies own the very ground we walk on. Then I think people might start to react and realize that they're giving up much too much, and they're giving it up not consciously. They're giving it up by their passive acquiescence.
Is there any priority on a question that comes up to your mind that you would like to ask people?
What will it take to get you interested in the political process? What will it take? At what moment is it going to dawn on you that democracy is a very delicate commodity, that it doesn't survive in many parts of the world, and that you have to nurture democracy, and the way to nurture it is to participate? It's so critical, and yet I find that this massive disinterest, this apathy that goes on in our society allows the bad guys to run things, because what they do is they buy it with money. They buy it through their corporate connections. They buy it through big campaigns. They buy it through controlling media. None of that would work if people made the effort to be knowledgeable and interested, because they would see right through it.
Well, I hope that people go and take the time to participate, because that is what democracy is all about. If people don't participate, then we won't have democracy. We'll be just managed by a corporation.
And this is one of the battlegrounds, I think, in the world where either we protect democracy or we don't, and it can only be protected by people being active, being responsible.
What Mayor Corrigan wonders is, what will it take to change the endemic citizens' apathy and to a progressive citizens' participation on social issues? The answer is up to you. To begin a social transformation, you can register your opinion on nowpolling.ca. Because remember, participation, more specifically, your participation, is the essence of direct democracy.